Hey, I'm Trulu, a Challenger ADC main, and I want to welcome you guys to How to ADC Laning Phase Edition. So what's up guys, I'm back with another episode on How to ADC, and for this week's episode we are going to be focusing on warding and how to use your trinket usage, and why in general it really is important. Now, as I mentioned in a previous episode, warding is actually a huge part to being able to maintain this flow and making sure that the enemy jungler doesn't actually interrupt how you're playing the game whenever he ganks you. Many people either often place their wards too early, they actually don't ward the right spot so their jungler could creep around and actually kill them even while being warded, or just often die because they placed their ward too late and the jungler is already there. In this video, I want to make sure that you fully understand how your ward works and how you can use all these different types of trinkets in different ways and basically different methods on how you never seen them before. Okay, so let's start off with standard trinket wards, or as many people may know it, yellow wards. Yellow wards are actually wards that are rechargeable and stack up to 2 different times. They last for a total of 90 to 120 seconds based on level and are very staple for ADCs to pick up in the early game. However, a big note on how we have to play around it is that it actually has a 4-minute cooldown in the early game, so we do have to make sure to place the yellow trinkets in the right spot at the right time. Now, you may be wondering, well, my ward is on there for 90 seconds, so that's 1.5 minutes, right? And the cooldown is 4 minutes. So can my support just ward and it would extend to 3 minutes long? And basically we'll have vision the whole time. Well, that's not entirely true, because there is actually a very popular support technique that is floating around, especially in higher elo, where in level 1 you actually ward the middle bush and then you back. So why you do this is because you get a different type of trinket, so you're maximizing both utilities, and you could actually sweep the bushes if they ward it, and you could get bush control. Bush control is very important in some matchups, and it helps you extend your lead very easily, especially when you're playing against a melee support and your support is actually a ranged champion. Now, this isn't a support guide, so I won't go too deep into that and why exactly you want to run that and how support basically works on that. But the specific reason why ADCs actually don't want to run the sweeper is because of the triangle method. So the triangle method makes it so we are always hovering the top side of the lane to make sure we have and maintain all points of contact at all times. Usually when your support is melee, they want to be going in and out of the bush so they don't get poked too much by their ADC. So if we flip the triangle method and the ADC actually goes on bottom, the support goes on top, the support just takes free poke from their ADC. Setting up in this fashion and making you the ADC actually ward topside while your support has bush vision and maintains that sweeper, it becomes a lot easier to play the lane phase. It really is just easier to keep it in this style of fashion and play it in this manner, so just keep it like that and you'll be fine. Okay, now that we talked about that, let's start talking about how to ward efficiently and how warding in the early game actually plays out. Warding effectively and having different types of warding techniques is actually a super underrated topic that almost nobody talks about, but we are going to be talking about that today because I think it is a very important subject that many people just tend to gloss over. It actually helps you out in the early game with your aggression and really helps out your mid to late game with your blue trinket warding and make sure that no objectives get taken for free. So let me show you guys some examples on how to ward in both a winning lane, a losing lane, and if you want to ward, how to ward without losing your early game tempo. To begin, let's start looking at a winning scenario on both red and blue side, as they both have different intricacies that you have to take into factor when playing against different champions. For red side, a very common warding spot while winning would be placing it right here, and here would be acceptable as well. The reason that these two spots are similar, but different at the same time, is because the first spot is aimed more towards junglers that execute ganks fast, or can hop over walls. For instance, we are talking about champions like Ghost Hecarim and champions like Zac or Shaco. This is because you can see them around 1 to 2 seconds earlier, and in the cases of champions that jump, the other ward spot would not see them at all. Now, against junglers who aren't that fast and have a more linear pattern, like let's just say Olaf, who just runs at you, we can start considering this ward. This ward is great as it sees the whole river, making you not surprised from ganks that wrap around, and helps you see if you can kill them in a 2v2 fast enough even before their jungler arrives. Now, using winning wards on blue side is a bit different, obviously, as we are now on the other side of the rift. We really only want to place one ward, maybe two in very specific cases. This is because this one ward covers everything, and junglers will always be spotted unless they take a huge trip around town, which first of all is very uncommon, and second of all, your mid and jungle wards or pinks typically are placed around this area, so you'll spot them as well. It really just is a solid winning ward, and there is nothing much better than it gets than this. However, in certain cases, let's just say Zac, Shaco, and Kayn, they have abilities to go over walls. In that case, we would just ward over the wall, or if you want to get a little fancy, step right here, place your cursor over here for an even better spot. This is obviously as their gank route is a bit more atypical due to their abilities. So while we're here, we are going to be looking at a very unique warding spot that many higher elo players you may have seen done playing ADC. And that is warding lane after your backing. And why do you really do this? The reason why a lot of ADCs do this is because they are just used to it. And TP used to be able to TP on wards before 13 minutes. And basically, that is a good flank ward. However, it does still have its purposes today, and you could use it in very specific scenarios. So when you're backing and you have 2 charges of ward, just place a ward and you are able to see if the enemy jungler is trying to counter gank you or lane gank you. This is very important because when you are freezing a lane, the jungler obviously has to come and help out their team. If you call out your jungler to come and fight a 3v3, the game may instantly be won in that scenario. Okay, so now moving on, we are going to be talking on how to ward when you're in a more losing or an even scenario for both sides. So starting with the blue side, it really is simple, and you just ward the tribush. It gets the job done and can see all the available angles you can get ganked from. In higher elos, you can also use different wards over walls such as this or this to prepare against dives. However, those are very, very uncommon until you reach a rank around Grandmasters. For the blue side, there is actually only one ward that you could do when you're losing or in even scenario, and it does have a fairly finicky setup. However, once you get used to it, you could do it with ease and replicate that all your games. So what I like to do is just stand flush against this wall and put my cursor over the tip of this rock. And you press 4, and bam, you're done. Again, for higher elos, warding this bush is fairly common for those who like to dive, but just try not to worry too much about it. Okay, so now let's actually look at how to ward while maintaining your early game tempo. So obviously, when you're in a losing or even scenario, you have a lot of time to go place down your ward and be safe, right? However, when you're winning, you are trying to apply pressure, and at the same time, you have to be worried about getting ganked. How do you do this? A super solid way is actually just to ward when the second minion wave arrives at around 2 minutes and 20 seconds. This ward will actually cover 3 camp ganks. It will cover Scuttle Crab if they're going from it from like Krugs. It will cover almost everything, and it will still not maintain your tempo. This will actually still be able to make you do cheater recalls, really just pressure them under tower, or do anything you really want to, and however you want to play the early game out. However, sometimes they are playing champions like Nunu, Jarvan, and Shaco who don't 3 camp, but instead could level 2 gank, or in Shaco's cases, he could clear very, very fast and gank you on the first wave. What would you do in these certain types of scenarios? Against these types of supports, what you want to tell your support is just instead of warding the lane bush, just to ward in an aggressive ward spot that I explained previously in this video. So what this ward does is it actually does decrease your lane output a fair bit, as obviously you won't gain as much bush control. However, it makes sure that you do not get ganked, and once your support's ward runs out, you just refresh the ward and you still wouldn't have any troubles getting level 2 or level 3 ganked by these annoying champions. So now that's all we are covering over Yellow Trinket, as that's almost everything you need to know. So let's start beginning talking about Blue Trinket and how to use it. This is an upgrade that you should always get at level 9, and honestly, as an ADC, you need it almost all the time. And even greater, it's free. If you have never used it before, it is basically a longer range ward that could be placed at over 4,000 units and basically has the same vision as a yellow ward. A bit smaller though. Now obviously with these type of wards there is a small catch, and that is it could be seen by enemy champions. Enemy champions could actually see it and hit it in one auto and it dies. However, it actually lasts forever otherwise. We always want to be getting this blue trinket whenever possible, as when you are playing ADC, you don't really want to be face checking anything, and it really could save your butt in certain scenarios. But a thing we have to realize is that we can't actually use these wards like how we use our regular wards. Obviously, that being because, first of all, we are out of laning phase, and second of all, they are actually not hidden on the map anymore. So often more than not, what we want to be doing with our wards is we want to be warding objectives like Baron or Dragon whenever you basically think they are on it, or whenever your team pings and thinks they are on it. But what if you actually already have vision on these type of objectives by, let's just say, your support placing down a pink ward, or basically your team buying a pink ward and placing it down? Obviously, since the blue trinket CD is fairly lower, we could have a lot of uptime on these blue trinkets, and do we want to be holding onto it the whole time? No, we don't. A great thing we actually could do in these certain types of scenarios is actually ward the spots that you think the enemies will not go to. Now, that does sound a bit weird, right? But basically, since these wards are permanent, if you ward the spots that the enemies are not going to, basically you'll have permanent vision over those spots and know if the enemy top laner or jungler is mispositioning, and you could get a free engage off. This is easily done by just deducing where the enemies are and just placing it in my personal favorite blue trinket spots. So let's just say if I place a ward in this small bush near Krugs and the tip of this small bottom bush here. This gives us a plethora of information, as we know they are not split pushing, and we should not be engaging mid at this moment because obviously their top laner could be here. So this lets our top laner actually, if he's losing, catch up, or if he's already winning, lets him get more ahead, get towers, and basically win the game off split pushing. And on the other flip side, if you see the top laner or jungler on this ward, you could actually just force Baron or force a 4v5 scenario with your top laner TPing behind them. So that's everything for warding and trinkets. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, as it did take a fairly long time, and this is my first time actually handing it off to my editor, Luke Quinha. These are all tips that I think are very important to climb, and I think warding is almost high up there and not talked about very often. I also wanted to tell you guys that I'm actually doing a personal coaching session, just releasing right now as of this day. If you guys want any personal coaching sessions, just message me on Discord. I am going to be doing $25 for basically watching 2 of your games and doing 1 VOD review. If you hop onto my Discord, I could give you a sample coaching session that I did with a previous client, and basically it shows exactly what we will be going over and giving you an improvement sheet basically at the end of the 2-hour session. So that's all for me today, and I hope you guys have a great day.